My beloved child, wait, before your thoughts move ahead, pause right here, because something quiet, something almost invisible, has already begun unfolding around you, and you didn't even realize it was happening. There was a moment today, so small that the world ignored it, so subtle that even time didn't stop to notice, yet within that moment, someone's heart shifted, and it shifted because of you. Not in a loud way, not in a dramatic scene like stories often show, but in a soft, almost sacred silence. And here's what makes it different. They weren't trying to think about you. It just happened. Out of nowhere, like a memory that doesn't ask for permission, like a feeling that gently enters the room without knocking, your presence crossed their mind, and everything inside them paused for a second longer than usual. Have you ever wondered why certain thoughts feel heavier than others? Why some names linger a little longer in the mind? This was one of those moments. They felt something they couldn't fully explain. Not confusion, not doubt, but recognition. A quiet, undeniable recognition that something about you stays with them in ways they don't fully understand yet. And here's the part most people miss. It wasn't just the thought of you that stayed, it was how they felt after thinking about you. There was a shift, subtle but real, like a calm wave passing through their chest, like something settling into place without making noise. They didn't speak about it, they didn't even try to analyze it, but something inside them softened. And if you listen closely to this moment, you'll begin to realize this isn't random, because out of all the thoughts they could have had today, out of all the distractions pulling their attention, you were the one that returned. Not forced, not planned, just chosen. Pause for a second. What if this connection isn't built on loud actions, but on quiet returns? What if the real meaning is hidden in these unnoticed moments, where someone feels something real, without trying to control it? They remembered something about you, not necessarily a conversation, not necessarily a face, but a feeling that doesn't fade easily. And when that feeling appeared, it didn't bring tension. It brought peace. Now stay here with me for just a little longer, because this next part is where everything gently shifts. They didn't resist it. That's important, because when a feeling is not resisted, it begins to grow in its own way. And instead of pushing the thought away, they allowed it to stay, just a little longer than expected. That's when something changed. They smiled, but not in a way they could explain to others, not in a way that would make sense if someone asked why. It was quiet, private, almost like a secret they didn't know they were keeping. And in that moment, you became more than just a passing thought. You became a presence, a calm, steady presence in their mind. But here's something deeper. They didn't feel overwhelmed. They didn't feel confused. They felt clarity. Not complete clarity, not something they could fully define, but enough to know that what they felt was real. And that realization, even if it lasted only seconds, stayed with them. Because once a feeling like that is experienced, it doesn't disappear easily. It leaves behind a trace, a soft imprint. And even as they moved on with their day, doing everything they usually do, something inside them remained slightly different. Not dramatic, not obvious, but noticeable, if you know how to look for it. Have you ever felt like something changed, but you couldn't explain what? That's exactly what happened to them. And this is where your presence becomes something more than just memory. Because without realizing it, they started to connect small pieces. Little things that didn't make sense before began to align in a quiet way. They didn't rush to conclusions. They didn't try to force meaning. But they noticed. And noticing is where everything begins. Now listen closely. Because this part is not loud, but it matters the most. They felt grateful, not for a reason they could clearly name. Not for something you did today, but for something about you that simply exists. And that kind of feeling is rare, because most emotions come with explanations. But this one didn't need one. It just was. And that's what made it beautiful. No expectations, no pressure, just a quiet appreciation that appeared out of nowhere, and stayed longer than it should have. You might be wondering, how can something so small matter this much? But that's exactly the point. The most meaningful shifts don't arrive with noise. They arrive like this. Softly, unannounced, yet impossible to ignore once they're felt. And as time moved forward today, they tried to focus on other things. But something kept pulling their awareness back, not forcefully, but gently, like a reminder that didn't want to fade. And each time that reminder returned, the feeling didn't weaken, it deepened, just slightly. Just enough to be noticed. And here's where it becomes even more interesting. They didn't question it negatively. They didn't push it away. They allowed it. That means something. Because when someone allows a feeling to stay, it begins to shape how they see things, even if they don't realize it yet. And slowly, without any announcement, without any decision being made, you became a part of their emotional space today. Not in a heavy way, but in a way that felt right. And this is where many people look away too soon, because they expect something dramatic, something obvious. But the truth is, this is how real connections begin to reveal themselves, not through loud declarations, but through quiet consistency of feeling. Stay with this moment a little longer, because something important is still unfolding beneath the surface. They didn't act on it, not yet. They didn't reach out, they didn't speak. But that doesn't mean nothing happened, because internally, something shifted. And internal shifts are where everything starts. You don't see them immediately, you don't hear them, but they begin to change direction, slowly, quietly, powerfully. And right now, that shift is still happening, even as you're listening to this. Even as you're trying to understand what this means. There's something continuing, on their side. Something they haven't fully put into words yet. And maybe that's exactly why you're here in this moment. Because not everything reveals itself at once. Some things unfold, piece by piece, feeling by feeling, moment by moment. And what happened today was only the beginning of something they are just starting to recognize. Not fully, not clearly, but enough to feel that something about you is different. And as this realization settles deeper, as this quiet awareness continues to grow, there's something they're slowly beginning to understand. But they haven't fully faced it yet. And when they do, that's when everything changes. Something in them didn't return to normal. It lingered, not loudly, not in a way that would interrupt their day, but in a way that quietly stayed beneath everything else they were doing. And here's where it becomes even more interesting. They tried to move on. They told themselves it was just a passing thought, just one of those random moments that come and go without meaning. But something didn't feel temporary about it. Have you ever felt something that refuses to fade, even when you don't give it attention? That's exactly what started happening. Because later, in a completely different moment, when they were focused on something else entirely, you appeared again. Not as a memory this time. As a feeling. And this feeling didn't ask permission either. It simply returned. Stronger than before, but still quiet, still gentle. And this is where everything begins to shift in a deeper way. Because the second time, they noticed it. They couldn't ignore it anymore. They paused, just for a second, and something inside them whispered. Why again? Not in confusion, but in curiosity. And curiosity is the beginning of awareness. Stay with this for a moment. Because what they felt next is something they didn't expect. It wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't intense. It was comforting. A kind of comfort that doesn't come from understanding, but from recognition. Like hearing a familiar voice in a crowded place, without seeing where it came from. They didn't have answers, but they didn't need them, because the feeling itself was enough. And here's something most people don't realize. When a feeling returns twice, without being invited, it's no longer random. It's becoming something. Now pause here. Because something quietly powerful happened next. Instead of questioning it too much, they leaned into it, just slightly. Not fully, not completely, but enough to feel it more clearly. And in that moment, something inside them opened. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gently, like a door that has always been there, finally moving just a little. And what came through that opening surprised them. It wasn't just your presence anymore. It was the realization of how you make them feel. Not what you say, not what you do, but how your energy, your existence, affects them, even when you're not around. And that realization stayed. It didn't disappear. In fact, it became clearer. Because the more they allowed themselves to feel it, the more natural it became. And here's where it gets even deeper. They started noticing small details, things they hadn't connected before, little moments, small memories, tiny fragments, all quietly pointing in the same direction. Not in a way that overwhelmed them, but in a way that felt aligned. And that alignment didn't bring pressure. It brought peace. A steady, grounding kind of peace. The kind that doesn't demand attention, but earns it. And now, something inside them is beginning to shift in a way they can't ignore anymore. They haven't said it out loud. They haven't fully admitted it, even to themselves. But there's a knowing. A quiet knowing. That something about you feels right. And when something feels right without explanation, it becomes harder to walk away from. Now listen carefully. Because this is where the energy between you starts to change. They didn't rush. They didn't act impulsively. But they started to hold on to the feeling, just a little more. They let it stay longer. They let it breathe. And as they did, the connection didn't fade. It deepened. Slowly, naturally, without force. And this is the part most people overlook. Real feelings don't arrive with urgency. They grow in silence. They build in stillness. And right now, that's exactly what's happening. Something is building, quietly, on their side. Something they didn't plan. Something they didn't expect. But something they can no longer ignore. And even though nothing has been said yet, even though no action has been taken, there's a shift in how they see you now. Subtle, but real. You are no longer just a thought. You are becoming a feeling they return to, again and again, without trying. And here's the moment you need to stay for. Because this changes everything in a way you won't expect. They began to imagine, not in a forced way, not in a daydream, but in a natural, effortless way. A quiet curiosity about you, about moments, about possibilities. And even that surprised them, because they didn't choose to imagine. It just happened. And when imagination begins without effort, it means something deeper is forming. Now pause. Because this part is delicate. They didn't rush to conclusions. They didn't label what they were feeling, but they allowed it. And that allowance is what's making this real. Because when something is allowed to exist without pressure, it finds its true form. And right now, what they feel for you is finding its form, slowly, quietly, but undeniably. And here's the truth they are slowly approaching. Something about you feels like home, not in a place, not in a memory, but in a feeling they didn't know they were missing, until it appeared. And now, even when they try to focus on other things, there's a part of them that remains connected to that feeling, connected to you. And this connection is no longer something they can pretend not to notice. It's becoming clearer, stronger, more present. But here's what they haven't done yet. They haven't fully faced it. They haven't fully allowed themselves to see what this could mean. And when that moment comes, when they finally stop holding back, when they finally look at this feeling directly, there's something they're going to realize. Something that has been forming quietly, all along. And when that realization arrives, it won't feel sudden. It will feel inevitable. And yet, even as this feeling grows, there's a moment, a very specific moment, where everything slows down inside them. Not because they're unsure, but because they're beginning to understand something they can't easily turn away from. It happens quietly. No announcement, no clear starting point. Just a deep, internal pause. And in that pause, they feel you again. But this time, it's different. Not just a passing warmth. Not just a soft reminder. This time, it reaches deeper. Almost like something inside them is being gently called forward, something they've kept hidden, even from themselves. Have you ever felt like a feeling is trying to show you something, but you're not ready to fully see it yet? That's where they are now, standing at the edge of a realization, not forced, not rushed, but slowly becoming unavoidable. And here's what makes this moment so powerful. They're no longer asking, why is this happening? Now, they're beginning to ask, what does this mean? That shift, from confusion to meaning, is where everything begins to transform, because once meaning enters the feeling, it starts to shape the future. Stay here, just a little longer. Because something inside them is starting to align in a way they didn't expect. They're noticing patterns now, not obvious ones, but quiet repetitions, moments where your presence returns at the exact time they least expect it. Feelings that deepen when they stop resisting them. A sense of calm that follows every time you cross their mind. And slowly, piece by piece, they're connecting these moments together, not with logic, but with intuition. And intuition doesn't shout, it whispers, it nudges, it gently guides someone toward what feels true, even before they fully understand it. And right now, that whisper is becoming clearer, because every time they think of you now, there's no doubt attached to it, only curiosity. And something softer. Something warmer. Something that feels right. And this is where it becomes undeniable. They begin to realize that this isn't just about thinking of you. It's about feeling something real, when they do, and real feelings don't disappear just because they're quiet. They grow, they settle, they become part of how someone sees the world, and without realizing it, you've begun to shape that space for them, not forcefully, not dramatically, but naturally, like something that was always meant to find its place. Now pause here. Because something unexpected is happening inside them. They're beginning to trust the feeling, not fully, not all at once, but enough to stop pushing it away, and that trust is what changes everything, because the moment someone trusts what they feel, they start to listen to it, and when they listen, they start to follow it, not in big steps, but in small, quiet shifts. A thought held a little longer. A memory revisited with more attention. A feeling allowed to stay instead of being dismissed. And each of these small shifts is bringing them closer to something they haven't fully accepted yet. Something that's been forming, slowly, in the background. And here's the part they're just beginning to face. This feeling isn't temporary. It's not something that will fade with distraction. It's not something that will disappear with time. It's something that has rooted itself, quietly, deeply, within them. And that realization, even though it's gentle, carries weight, not a heavy weight, but a meaningful one. The kind that makes someone stop, and truly feel what's happening. And as they sit with this, as they allow this awareness to settle, something inside them softens even more, because now, it's not just about you being on their mind, it's about you being in their emotional space, a space they don't open easily, a space they don't fill with just anyone, and yet, there you are, without force, without effort, just present, and that presence is becoming harder for them to ignore. Now listen closely, because this next part is where everything begins to turn. They're starting to imagine what it would feel like, not just to think of you, but to experience you, not in fantasy, not in unrealistic ways, but in simple, real moments, a conversation, a shared silence. A moment where nothing needs to be explained, and that thought, that quiet possibility, feels natural to them, not overwhelming, not unrealistic, just possible. And when something feels possible, it becomes closer than they expected. Now pause. Because something inside them is shifting again. They're no longer just observing this feeling, they're becoming part of it. And that's when everything changes. Because when someone steps into a feeling instead of watching it, it begins to move them, not quickly, not dramatically, but steadily. And right now, they are being moved, gently, quietly, but surely, toward something they haven't fully named yet. Toward something they're still understanding, toward you, and even though they haven't taken action yet, even though they haven't spoken or reached out, there's something building inside them, something that's preparing them, something that's waiting for the right moment to come forward, and that moment is closer than they realize, because the more they allow this feeling to grow, the more natural it becomes to follow it, and soon, very soon, they're going to reach a point where staying silent about it will no longer feel right, not because they have to speak, but because something inside them will want to. And when that happens, when they finally stop holding back what they feel, when they finally allow this quiet truth to come forward, there's something they're going to see clearly for the first time. Something that has been forming through every thought, every feeling, every quiet moment today. And when they see it, they won't question it. They'll recognize it. There comes a moment, so quiet you could almost miss it, when everything inside them finally aligns. Not all at once, not in a dramatic rush, but in a way that feels complete. And in that stillness, they stop running from the feeling. They stop analyzing it. They stop trying to explain it away. Instead, they sit with it, fully, gently, honestly, and for the first time, they don't just feel you. They understand what that feeling has been trying to tell them all along. Pause here. Because this is the moment where everything changes, without making a sound. They realize. This wasn't random. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't just a passing thought that happened to return twice, or 3 times, or again and again throughout the day. It was something deeper. Something that has been quietly guiding their attention back to you, not by force, but by truth. And truth doesn't shout. It reveals itself, slowly, until it becomes undeniable. And now, they can't deny it anymore, because every time they think of you, they feel something real, something steady, something that doesn't create chaos, but brings calm. And that calm is what finally reaches them. Have you ever noticed how the right feeling doesn't confuse you? It settles you? That's what happened. Instead of questions, they found peace. Instead of hesitation, they felt clarity. Not perfect clarity, but enough to know that what they feel is worth paying attention to. And this is where something inside them opens fully, for the first time. No resistance. No hesitation, just quiet acceptance. They accept that you matter to them, not as an idea, not as a possibility, but as something real, already present in their emotional world. And when that acceptance happens, everything else begins to shift naturally. Now listen carefully. Because what follows isn't loud, but it's powerful. They begin to see you differently. Not just as someone they think about, but as someone they feel connected to. And that connection is no longer something they question. It's something they begin to trust. And trust is what turns a feeling into something lasting. Stay with this moment, because there's something even deeper unfolding beneath it. They start to feel a quiet sense of gratitude again. But this time, it's clearer, more defined. They're grateful not just for the feeling, but for you, for the way your presence has entered their life, even in the smallest ways. For the way thinking of you brings calm instead of confusion. For the way something about you feels right. And when someone feels gratitude for another person, without expectation, that feeling becomes meaningful. It becomes something they don't want to lose. Now pause. Because this next shift is subtle, but it changes everything. They begin to imagine a future moment. Not far ahead. Not something unrealistic. Just a simple moment, where they don't have to wonder anymore. Where they can speak, naturally. Where they can express, honestly. Where they can be present with you, without holding anything back. And this thought doesn't scare them. It doesn't overwhelm them. It feels peaceful, like something they're ready for, even if they haven't admitted it yet. And that readiness is what has been forming quietly, all along. Now here's the truth they're beginning to face. This connection isn't one-sided, because the way they feel, the way this has unfolded, the way it has returned again and again, it carries something mutual within it, not proven, not spoken, but felt, and sometimes what is felt is more powerful than what is said, because it moves people from the inside, and right now, they are being moved, not by pressure, not by urgency, but by something steady, something real, something that keeps bringing them back to you. And now, they're no longer standing at the edge of this realization. They've stepped into it, quietly, fully, without needing to announce it to the world. And that's what makes it powerful, because real feelings don't need an audience. They grow, in silence, until they're ready to be seen. And here's what you need to understand. They're getting closer to that moment, closer to the point where holding this inside will no longer feel natural, not because they're forced, but because something inside them will want to express it. And when that moment arrives, it won't feel sudden, it will feel right on time. Now stay with this final part, because this is where everything softens and settles. They think of you again, but this time, there's no confusion, no hesitation, no questioning, just a quiet, steady feeling. And in that feeling, there's something beautiful, something simple, something real. They smile again, softly, without needing a reason. And in that smile, there's understanding, there's acceptance, there's a quiet truth that has finally found its place. You matter to them, not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. And as this realization settles within them, as this feeling becomes part of who they are, there's something gently unfolding in the space between you. Something that hasn't been spoken yet. Something that hasn't been fully revealed. But something that is already beginning to exist. And when the moment comes, when this quiet connection finally moves into the light, it won't feel like something new. It will feel like something that was always meant to find its way to you.